Not everybody can be a risk taker.
Well.
You know, either you're married and you have children, you got to provide. I can only relate to myself. I was single at the time when I took the risk. I didn't know if it was going to work out. I was leaving a guaranteed job. I remember when I went to quit the police department, my partner looked at me and goes, well, you crazy? Why don't you put in 10 years so you get vested? Yeah. And I said, well, I'm not going to wait around another 4 years,
$7
5 years.
an hour.
Yeah. So I'm going to go and take the risk.
Yeah. Welcome to Opportunity Knocks. I can't believe I'm saying this, episode 22. And I pulled the Sprinter all the way to Miami from Parkland. And I did that because I have a real special guest today. This is somebody who I met when I was the president of the Kiwanis Club, Biscayne Bay Kiwanis Club. And Rodney Barretto is a trailblazer. I mean, he has accomplished so much in business, in relationships that he's built. I'm so happy to have you here, Rodney, and hear about when opportunity knocked on your door and how you take advantage. So welcome to Opportunity Knocks.
Thanks, Todd. It's great seeing you. You look good, by the way. I think this is working for you.
Thanks so much, man. So, you know, for again, out in Broward, and by the way, in Miami, Rodney's a well-known guy. Broward, people might not know who Rodney Barretto is. Let's give a little background, because your story is unbelievable how you started out. You started out in a family of police officers, right?
Well, you know, I'm one of 11 kids. So my mom and dad are high school sweethearts for Jesuit High School in downtown Miami.
Wow.
And so they had 11 kids, and we all grew up here. I had an older brother who went on to work for the Miami Beach Police Department. Richie became chief of police there and retired. Then I had several brothers who were firemen. And then you know, when you're one of 11 kids, your parents, they encouraged us to go to college. They couldn't pay for all of us to go to college. So we had to work and then go to school on our own, which I did. I went to Miami-Dade and then eventually to Barry University. But I became a policeman at 19 years old. So I was a policeman at 19 years old to 25.
And at the time, Richie he's your older brother.
Yeah.
So he was already in the...
he wasn't, at the time when I became a policeman, he was like a lieutenant. Yeah, he wasn't a chief then. But I remember I found a stub of my paycheck. I was making $7.35 an hour as a policeman. Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah. So it's
that's unbelievable to think back of that. But now you can't get anything. I mean, now obviously the prices of real estate here has gone through the roof. But even back then, I mean, it's so tell me, during that time as a police officer, how long were you a police officer for?
For 5 years.
Okay.
And then what I did is for 4 of the 5 years, I worked off duty at Monty Trainer's restaurant in Coconut Grove. And Monty's was the restaurant in Coconut Grove. In 1980, he went from a beer wine joint to a full liquor license. And it was the most popular place in Miami. And in fact, on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, there was a line around the block to get in the place. And I was the off-duty policeman there. So I met all Miami there. And just kind of, you know, from there, of course, Monty was a big political player behind the scenes. And all the politicians came there and hung out there, and I got to meet all the politicians and interface with them and so on and so forth. And then, you know, back in 85, I was working plainclothes in the Grove, and this guy tried to shoot me, believe it or not. And there was a big article in the paper, and we arrested him. There was, when I walked into the restaurant the next day, Monty was there with a bunch of politicians, and he said, "Hey, listen, you know, I consider you a very good friend. Why don't you come work for me? You don't need to be shot at." So I said, "Wow, the opportunity knocked."
Yeah, that's an opportunity you took advantage of.
So I took advantage. I went to the chief of police at the time, a guy named Clarence Dixon, an African-American chief. I worked directly for the chief.
And this was Miami Beach or Miami? City Miami.
Miami.
Okay.
And I went to talk to him and to tell him about the opportunity. And he was very, very helpful. He said, "Listen, the door's open. Go for it. If it doesn't work out, come back and I'll hire you back." So
nice.
And so I did it. I took the chance. Now, you know, I wasn't married. I was single. I didn't have all those circumstances. Didn't have all those constraints. So I saw this as an opportunity.
Sure.
So back then, Monty had 9 restaurants and clubs. He was the place to hang out and go to, and I immediately immersed myself into his business and kind of became his right-hand guy. And
so that was the hospitality business then?
Yeah, it was the hospitality.
That's what Monty did always? That was his...
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard of Monty's, but I didn't know his background. Yeah. So you worked... So did you learn the because that's a whole different world there, especially from being a police officer to
Yeah, but
hospitality.
I didn't actually run the food and beverage or any of that. I was more kind of like his guy, and if he made a decision, I executed it for him.
Got it. So
So
operations kind
yeah,
of
kind of like yeah, and he was a big civic guy, so he brought Miss Universe here, Miss USA. He brought Wheel of Fortune. Back then, there was
No
there was
way.
no convention bureau, so he was the convention bureau on this side of the bay. On the other side of the bay, Miami Beach side, was a guy named Steve Moss who owned the Fountain Blue.
Yeah.
And when those two big guys got together, something happened. If they disagreed, it didn't happen. And so but there was no organized convention bureau. None of that exists at that time.
I'd like to know, Rodney, what'd you learn, especially as a young, because obviously when you're working for government, we're at the police station. You're seeing different types. Some of the heroes of our world. I mean, I'm a big proponent of supporting our first responders, and as you know, with World War II veterans, we do a lot with and stuff like that. But that side of it, when you see that, and then you go to a business side, something like Monty Trainer, how you're saying it, that's a big change. He's getting things happening from a big picture. What did he teach you when you saw him from afar and seen, or actually you were pretty close up because you're working closely with him? But what did is there something that he saw him do that says he made this happen? Here's what
so Monty was, he still is. He's still alive. He's a great friend, bigger than life. He's a connector. He knows how to put people together. I don't care what walk of life you were. He always had time to talk to you, listen to you, help you, give you advice, help him financially. He was just a go-to guy, and did a phenomenal job of being there and promoting Miami. He loved Miami. He just loved promoting Miami. He actually I remember when he put a group of guys together, they put up the money to bring UM basketball back. UM basketball had disappeared. It was their efforts that brought basketball back.
What year was that?
It was in the early 80s, like mid 80s. Yeah. If you look it up, I mean, he's the one.
One of my good friends in Parkland, Jeff Douglas, played basketball for UM back in the probably 60s or something before.
Right.
But that's interesting. I didn't know that was gone. So he brought it back.
Yeah.
Wow. So you do that. You learn from Monty. He was kind of a mentor, obviously a mentor. Yeah. He was the mentor. So how did Barretto Group, how did that come about?
So again, I was very close to politicians, and someone came to me and said, "Hey, listen, if you can get full support for my issue, I'll be willing to pay you some money if you can do this." And I said, "Oh, let me try." And I learned the issue, and I became an advocate for the issue, and was able to go get the votes for the issue. And the person paid me, and I said, "I can do this. It's not very difficult, And so from there, this light bulb went off, and that's when I started Rodney Barretto and Associates, and then I started. Then we became Marketing Projects Inc. And I just started, represent people who wanted to do business with local government.
And they were going to you now. They were coming to you when they heard that you can get things done.
Yeah.
So what advice can you give for, in other words, what's a trait or, something that I had the mayor of Broward on, and he was telling me preparation. He kept on saying, you got to be prepared, be over prepared in business. Is there anything that you could say that would you say is, here's a trait that really helped me get along?
So I think, I think being a former policeman gave me a lot of credibility, but your word is your honor. And when I went to advocate for an issue, I gave both sides of the issue. So I was very transparent. And I tell people all the time, be very transparent. You burn a politician one time, they'll never talk to you again. They won't answer that phone. They won't let you in the door. So you got to say, hey, here's the positives. You're going to hear the negatives. Let me tell you if those negatives are true or not. You know what I mean? And just put all the facts out there and let them make the decision whether they want to support you or not.
I love it. Transparency.
So you got to have that. Yeah. And so I built a lot of credibility. I mean, when a politician came to me and said, hey, can you raise me X amount of dollars? I would always, A, I would never commit. Okay. And B, I would just always over deliver. So I instantly had a lot of credibility. Like, this guy, he's good for his word. He says he's what he's going to do. This space has got, there's a lot of talkers in this space. And,
Sure.
you know, so, right. So,
Yeah.
what you want to do is you want to separate yourself from the
A
pack.
doer. Yeah.
You know, I'm a doer. I've always been a doer, you know,
I can tell.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's funny because today with social media and digital marketing and stuff, you didn't have any of that. You built it based on a handshake and trust.
Yeah.
Right?
And in fact, a lot of my early agreements were all handshakes. Never was a written agreement.
That's awesome.
You know, it's amazing. And, you know, but you know, once I kind of got out there, then the entrepreneur spirit inside was hatched. I built one of the largest surface parking lots in downtown Miami. A lot of people don't know that. And I sold it. I had all the majority of the parking around their first arena in downtown Miami.
Was that your first big deal?
That was
first big.
Well, no, but it was part of it.
It was a big one.
Then I built an electronic medical records company. I was selling other people's software, hosting all these doctors around the whole country at the Nap in downtown Miami.
Yeah.
Somebody come knocking on the door and said, "Hey, I want to buy your business." I sold that business. I bought and sold real estate. Got it entitled, sold to developers. You know, I was part of a bank that we built up. I mean, so I love business. Today I have several different companies in all different aspects, and I just love it. I mean, it's hard for, you know, when you buy a piece of property and whatever decision you make with that piece of property, you got one person to look at in the mirror is yourself. Did I make the right decision? Did I sell it at the right time? Did I get enough money for it? You know what I mean? You know,
Rodney, you know, this is always something I think about, especially for a young entrepreneur starting out is, you know, now you have the ability to buy a business and to look at business, but in the beginning, if somebody's getting started, they're just getting started. Can you recommend something? In other words, if they find an opportunity, a deal out there, whether it's in real estate, a business, whatever it is, they could still, even if they don't have money, they can make money on that, right? If there's a deal. So is there any
Well, I think, you know, and I tell people this all the time, and I actually have parents who call me all the time. Can you talk to my kids? You know, could you, you know, inspire them, help them, put them on the right path? And I tell them all the time, you know, people who are very successful business people are risk takers. Not everybody can be a risk taker because, you know, either you're married and you have children, you got to provide, you got roof over your head, you got health insurance, you got groceries on the table. You know, I can only relate to myself. I was single at the time when I took the risk. I didn't know if it was going to work out. I was leaving a guaranteed job with guarantee. I remember when I went to quit the police department, my partner looked at me and goes, "Well, what are you crazy? Why don't you put in 10 years so you get vested?"
Yeah.
And, you know, and I'm
that was the mentality.
Yeah. And I said, well, I'm not going to wait around another 4 years,
$7
5 years.
an hour.
Yeah. So I'm going to go and take the risk.
Yeah.
So I tell people, you know, you got to be a risk taker.
Yeah.
You know, that's business. You know, there's bigger rewards, but you got to be willing to, you know, and if you look around, most successful people have failed in the past and they've learned from their failures what to do the second time, not to fail. So I think that, you know, to your young listeners, that's an important thing, just to make sure, you know, you learn from your mistakes.
That's great.
Yeah.
I want to talk about some good stuff now, which is the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
What you did to that. That's awesome. So how did that come about? How'd you get in that position of bringing the Super Bowl a year?
So 38 years ago, a guy named Dick Anderson, former all-pro safety for the Miami Dolphins. It's funny because I literally just left breakfast with his son, who I'm giving advice to on what to do. Anyways, so Dick asked me to get involved with him. He was the first chairperson of a Super Bowl committee in Miami, or actually around the country. And then he asked me to head up government affairs for him. I did. And I've been on the committee ever since, 38 years now.
It's been 38 years?
Yeah.
Oh, and what's the committee's, the mission of the committee is to
bring Super Bowls to Miami. So Miami has the most amount of Super Bowls ever in any other city. We have 11. I've chaired 3 of them, more than I'm the only person in America that's chaired 2, now 3. So I got my own football record. So, and I've literally raised $100 million and all kinds of in-kind service to put on Super Bowls for Miami. The good thing about Super Bowls for Miami, and I tell people all the time, it's all the business that's generated, right? It starts at your airport. It's rental car companies, it's hotels, it's restaurants, it's the shopping, it's corporate Americans at its best. They come here, open checkbook, open credit card, they're entertaining their guests, they're just
A lot of money.
a lot of
Yep.
money,
A lot of action.
a lot of
fun.
action going
Yep.
on.
Yep.
So it's great for your community, great for all my friends who have restaurants, hotels, and businesses. It's just phenomenal.
When do you start looking at the weather report? When
You know,
that's the one thing. It's like when I go on a golf trip,
Listen,
I'm like, how do I know?
We're the only people that had Prince who performed at halftime. He sang "Purple Rain" in the rain. So if you look it up, yeah,
It's cool.
one of the best halftime
That was
shows
one of the
ever.
best. Yeah,
And he sang "Purple Rain" in the rain in Miami.
I
So,
remember that.
Yeah, so
That's got to be unbelievable. So, what's next for Rodney Barretto? We have anything? I mean, obviously, football is one, the NFL, but isn't there some other sports too, or is there?
So the mayor called and asked me to chair the FIFA World Cup, where we have 7 games here. We're going to have the bronze finalists here in Miami. So we have 7 games over a 5-week period in July of 26. So we're just putting together a committee. We're, getting it put all together and getting ready to announce things. And it's going to be big. It's going to be the world's largest event. We'll
It's
be here in
unbelievable.
Miami. So.
I mentioned we went to Europe with my family, and soccer there is it's a lifestyle. So when you're, one last question, Rodney, before we go, because I'm curious, when you run, and you just mentioned chairing a committee that big, I mean, these are powerhouse people that you're leading. What's the mindset, like what's the going into that and going into those board meetings and it's motivating, inspiring them? Is it something that, obviously it's a skill you learn over time, but is there anything that you look at that and say, you know what, this is something I learned from that, or this is something that helped me achieve success with this group of powerhouse businesses? In other words, if I'm going in for a meeting and I'm pitching to a board, sometimes just nerves get to me,
Right.
like it's a human natural thing, but you're dealing with some of the biggest people in
listen, I used to, under the old days when we pitched Super Bowls, I used to make a presentation to 32 owners.
Every owner you present?
Yeah, I would stand in front of 32 owners and tell them why to come to Miami. And we'd go through this whole thing and they'd have questions. And I'm speaking to all these
Jerry
very
Jones,
wealthy, all these very wealthy owners.
Cool.
And so we've had a blast. I mean, I've been very fortunate. I'm a huge believer, and all my life I've given back to the community. This community has been very good to me. So I've always volunteered and give back. Governor Bush, Governor Chris, now Governor DeSantis. I chair the Fish and Wildlife Commission for the state of Florida, which is amazing.
Second time. Congratulations.
No, it's
right? Or no, third
time.
Yeah.
So it's I love it because I love the outdoors, and we're really doing some great things around the state of Florida. It allows me to travel around the state and meet all kinds of folks that whether we're regulating their livelihood or their fishing and hunting. It's just an amazing opportunity. So I thank those governors for that opportunity. But I'm always engaged in something in the community, and I love it. I mean, it's just amazing to give back. It's important. And I would encourage all if you want to get involved, you should volunteer, get involved. I don't care if it's a beach cleanup or just get involved in something for your community. Make your community better.
That's right. And get your kids involved too. As a parent, having young kids see that, one of the best things I did with my kids when we lived in Miami was taking them to the Boys and Girls Club and urban, all the events that we had. And it was like, I want them to see it because it's not always.
So it's so funny you say that. It's like, even like, if you go down our expressways here, they're all landscaped now and all that. Before they used not to be.
Right.
And I made the presentation in front of all these different government bodies and said, listen, we're bringing all these people to our community. We should be, we should have this, it shouldn't just be grass and rocks.
Yeah.
So we got everything landscaped and it looks a lot better. And I'm a big proponent of how the community needs to look and feel, because it's important, not only just because of visitors, but we live here full time.
Yep.
So we're looking at full time, right? So, but those are the things that are important.
That's great. Rodney, I can't, I know you're a busy man and taking, this time out of the day to speak with us and to give your insight, and, you're just an awesome guy, man. I really appreciate you, and can't wait to see what's next for Rodney Barretto.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you coming down here and spending time and coming south. And we live in, and I often say this, we live in not the hottest city in America, but the hottest city in the world. Everybody wants to be here.
Yeah.
And you see it now since the pandemic. all the companies that are moving here to South Florida. It's become a real melting pot.
It has. And you mentioned Monty's. Harricones was another one, and they he just retired after, and he was my first client.
Yeah, well, I used to love his original restaurant. And I'm the one that encouraged him to go into the park and expand his restaurant.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I told him how to do it. I told him how to do it.
Yeah,
it was a city-owned park. I told him how to do it, who to talk to.
Great.
Yeah, I used to go there all the time. What a great place.
What a great guy.
Yeah, he is. Steve.
He helped me out. You know, he saw me sitting there, Rodney, and I just started my company. Just lost my business before that. I had a kid. And he sat down next to me and he said, "You're always here. I see you having coffee." I said, "Yeah." And I introduced myself and he said, "I could help you out." And he starts bringing lawyers over and he goes, "I want you to meet Todd Patton." Yeah. He goes, "This is the top lawyer." And I'm sitting there going, how to talk about an opportunity knock. And we had stayed friends for many years. So it's good to see what he's accomplished over these years. And isn't he having a $5,000? He is this week, next week. But again, thank you so much, Rodney.
All right, man.
All right,
My pleasure.
See you. Yeah, thanks, man.
Yeah, brother.